Everybody, welcome to my channel. I'm Creative Katie Karen Burchill. Today I am going to show you just how easy it is to use your art journal, mixed media supplies to create a welcome sign that you can hang outside your door or inside. Now, this is cut out of MDF. My husband cut it out from a larger sheet, and I had painted it a neutral color. But when I started this project, I didn't want the background to be this color. I wanted to put some snowflakes on there, so I wanted to paint it blue, but I don't do one tone. So I did some playing around and figured out how to create an interesting mixed media art journal kind of background that is just going to add a little oomph to this sign. So I played around and I experimented, but now I'm just going to flip this over and I will walk you through it. I'm going to use three colors to create the background: turquoise, bright aqua, and burnt sienna. This one's fluid Liquitex Basics, but you can just use the regular paint. This is just what I have handy and I wanted to use it up. So I am applying paint with a makeup sponge and I really have no plan. I'm just plopping this on there, mixing it right on the surface, adding in some burnt sienna. I just want to get some layered colors in there. When I did the first part, the top part, and I just had the bright aqua and the turquoise, something was missing. I needed a little something, something. So that's why I added the burnt sienna, and that just kind of changed the whole trajectory of this. I'm going to continue to just layer on the colors, drawing in between. Some places are getting more aqua, some are getting more turquoise, some are getting more burnt sienna. And I just keep playing till I like what I see in front of me. It's that cloud-like, interesting kind of background. So just playing. Now, this sign, it's quite long and it's very awkward to create on it, and even more so when I'm trying to film. So I apologize for any times that I'm off camera. It Now there's a lot of repetition when I create this sign, but I don't film all of it. Just giving you the guidelines, the steps that you need to take. The paint on here was actually, I believe, was house paint that I had that I just put a base coat on there. So I'm just going back and forth between the three colors. Now, if you wanted a different color combination, again, I recommend having, at least two colors, maybe three, just to build that interest into your background. It's what's going to make your sign stand out from everybody else's. So if I put too much burnt sienna, I let it dry a little bit, then I come back in with the bright aqua on top of it, or using my heat tool in between, just to speed up the process. There really is no right or wrong. You just have to jump in and trust that, you're just going to you're going to keep working it till it looks great. And this really is kind of just the base coat because I end up using some stencils to add more layers. And I know I'm going to stencil my letters on there and add the snowflakes. So a lot of the background is going to get covered up, so it doesn't have to be so exact, perfect. Don't get too precious. I love the addition of the burnt sienna here. It really grunges it up a little bit, makes it hides a lot of the flaws as well. If you want one color, it shows every little flaw. When you add multiple colors and you've got highlights and low lights, it almost disguises or hides any of the flaws that might be there. So, like, as I said, I'm not filming all of this just trust that, you're going to get enough of the information to do that. Now here I'm using this big wreath stencil from the Crafter's Workshop. I want it to kind of simulate that it was, there were trees in the background. So I'm using straight up turquoise paint, the same turquoise that I used in the background. And I'm just stenciling this big wreath stencil, this leafy pattern all over. And I'm turning the stencil this way and that way and covering the entire background. Again, this is just adding some oomph from a plain ordinary sign. I've overlapped it and just keep going till I cover the entirety of the sign. So look at your stencils. Any leafy pattern, any evergreen pattern you could use for this. I have other boards like this, so my plan is to do some for each season. Look at all that detail. Now, these are alphabet stencils that I got on Amazon. I'm using the 6-inch ones, but you can also get them in 4-inch, 3-inch, 2-inch. So whatever size sign you have. And I am putting it on the sign. I'm kind of, deciding how I want to do it. I'm going to add these snowflakes. More about those later. But did you notice that I'm not putting the word right down the middle? I've kind of tilted it this way and that way. That means I don't have to be so perfect. I've spaced it out, but I don't have to be so perfect because I'm slanting them. And so I don't have to measure and get everything perfectly level. Now I'm taking some burnt sienna, not the fluid burnt sienna. This is just the regular Liquitex Basics. And I'm putting burnt sienna on there as the first coat. What I really want is copper. But copper, like many of the metallics, is a little bit more translucent. You can see through it. So I wanted to darken it up. So I'm putting the burnt sienna underneath, and then on the same makeup sponge, I'm coming back with copper. So you're going to have all this sheen and shine on the top layer. It's going to look like it's copper, but you have that darkness from adding the burnt sienna. Now I'm using a makeup sponge and I'm going fairly slowly here. And I'm not pressing on the makeup sponge. I don't want it to seep under. I want to keep fairly straight, perfect lines on these stencils. So here I am with burnt sienna and then on top of it, the copper. And I'm loving the combination of the burnt sienna, the copper color with that teal blue in the background. And remember, I added the burnt sienna to my background, and this just tied it all in together. I could have used black here, but I thought that was going to be a little too stark. Navy didn't seem quite right. And I'm really happy with the burnt sienna. So adding that burnt sienna to the background kind of guided this selection and made this just really, really pop. I've also done the edges in the copper burnt sienna. So it looks like it's, wrapped in copper. Now I'm going slowly. I'm giving it time to dry in between and applying another layer to build up the depth of color and the sheen. Now you don't want to use your heat tool when you have the stencil there. And so I'm going to show you a way to come back and add more, or you can just wait and let it dry and then come back once it's dry. Because if you keep piling layer upon layer of paint without letting it dry in between, it gets kind of sticky. There we have it. So I'm just going to put that off to the side. I'll need the E at the end of the word as well. And I'm just positioning this. You can see I've taped off the number that was on those stencils. And I'm just going to go letter by letter, putting the burnt sienna first and then 1 or 2 layers of the copper to build up the depth of color. You can still see a lot of that blue, so it does need a couple layers. Just go slow and steady. Like I said, none of this is difficult, but it does require a bit of patience. Now you'll notice that C isn't as dark as the L or the E above it. And I did that deliberately because I didn't build up the color here. So the letters, these stencils are pretty easy to realign. You can just put it back on, position it, and do it. So whichever way works best for you. If this gives you success doing it this way, then do this way. If you have to be patient, leave the stencil on it so you don't have to worry about realigning it, then do it that way. Just don't press hard on the makeup sponge. A light touch, slow and careful. So I'm going to dry it and then I'm going to reposition the stencil on there and add another layer if I think that it needs it. So there is the sign with all the letters and everything done. Now, these snowflakes came from the Dollar Tree. Came in a package of whatever, they have holes in them. So I'm just grabbing some spackling, just regular hardware store spackle, but you could use modeling paste if that's what you have. You could also just omit this step. I'm just filling that hole in and just letting it dry. Like I said, everything's really easy. It's just somewhat time consuming. And it's awkward when you're working on a large surface like this. So now I want to paint my snowflakes white, and you can use white acrylic paint or gesso. Some gessos have more of a yellow tinge. They're not exactly white. So depending on what you have in your stash, that's what you can use. And I'm just using a makeup sponge and I'm only doing the one side of the snowflake because I'm going to be gluing that snowflake down. So there's no need to get paint on the other side. And in fact, having paint there makes it a little tougher to glue it down. So giving this one coat of white. Now I know that I'm going to add something to it here, so I just want a good base coat. So here's the sign, and you'll notice that the letters, they don't pop as much as I'd like them to. So I thought about how I wanted to make those letters stand out a little bit more. I could take my Posca paint pen and outline them, but I chose to do some shading around them. And you can see the M, I've already done that. And you can see how much more it is standing out against the background. So I am going to use my shading technique using my angle brush. This is called floating acrylic. I will link the video where I teach this process, but I'm using black acrylic paint and I'm shading on the letter to make this stand out. So this is a technique that once you learn it, you will use it on every single project and it really makes a difference. So it's well worth your time and effort to learn how to do this. Because this sign is going outside and I will be varnishing it, I don't want to use my Stabilo All pencil or charcoal because that would reactivate when I put the wet varnish on it. So here you see I'm drying it in between. I want it dry before I do the next section because if it's still wet and I go in there, you kind of mess it up. So again, this is a slow step-by-step process. Do little bits at a time. Let it dry, go back and build it up. It's easy enough to add more. It's harder to take it away. So I will be doing a couple letters and I will be speeding up, just showing you how this happens. But I hope you see what a difference this makes. The other option, if I want something permanent, is to use my fine line applicator bottle with black acrylic paint and outline all those letters. But quite honestly, that would be quite a long process. I think this was easier for me. If the letters were a different color, they weren't the metallic, I might have used dashes with the fine line applicator, um, to kind of make faux stitching. But I didn't think that would look good with the copper. So here I'm doing different parts of it. And then once it's dry, or once I dry it with the heat tool, then I come back in and do the other parts. But I don't want to overlap when I have a wet brush, or that it's still not dry. Here I'm going on the inside of the letter. If I had done it on the outside of the letter, it would have given a slightly different effect. Equally as nice, just a different choice. I started doing it on the letter, so I kept going with that. Don't be afraid to turn things upside down to make it easier to give you the best access to the letter. You don't have to strain yourself trying to, you know, get to where you want to be shading. And you, of course, will not be filming. So there it is before the shading. And there it is after the shading. I think it improves. What do you think? So back to the snowflakes. I wanted to texturize them and give them some shine. So I'm using TCW Shimmery Goodness. You could use sparkling glitter glaze on them. You could put modeling paste on there to add the texture and then the glitter glaze. But here I'm just using the Shimmery Goodness and I'm just kind of globbing it on, building the texture on the snowflakes. The Shimmery Goodness has kind of an opalescent kind of look to it that I like, just a little bit of extra bling, but I really like the added texture to it. And again, I'm just using the makeup sponge to apply it. Easy peasy. You can hopefully you can see the texture. I do give you a close up coming up of the snowflake where you can see the texture that I've created. You could also use the pearl white stencil butter from the Crafter's Workshop. That would work equally well. And hopefully you can see that the surface is texturized, just a little extra something something. And that's the advantage when you make your own stuff. You can just add. So to glue this down, I'm using the E6000. I'm just going to position these snowflakes where I want them. I love how the pop of white comes out. I like how the letters have can be easily seen, especially with the black shading. I've not had much luck using a glue gun um, when gluing wood pieces together. I find that typically gives out. So here I'm just putting some lots in the middle and then going across so that I've got adhesion on pretty much all parts of the snowflake. And then I am pressing it down to get good solid contact. And I just progress gluing down all the snowflakes in the same fashion. I do give this at least 2 coats of polyacrylic satin varnish. And there is the sign in front of my tree. And then outside by my door. I hope you learned a few tips. So go use your mixed media art journal stash and create a welcome sign.